Mark woke up believing today would be the story they'd one day tell their kids, proof that love and effort still matter. He'd spent the week in the garage, handcrafting a wooden box for his wife's promotion. Cradling it, he walked into her office smiling, until a coworker glanced at the box and smirked. She's in the CEO's office, thanking him personally. The door swung open. Mark froze, staring at his wife's hands locked behind her boss's neck. You know, I've never been the kind of guy who wears a suit or carries a briefcase. I work with my hands, always have. I'm a custom woodworker here in Chicago, kitchen cabinets, handcrafted furniture, the kind of pieces you pass down to your kids one day. My shop smells like sawdust and fresh varnish, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm steady, reliable, the guy you call when your table's wobbling or you need a deck built before summer BBQ season. And I like to think I was the same way in my marriage, solid. Olivia and I met at a street fair 6 years ago. She was this ambitious marketing whiz with a laugh that made you forget what you were saying. We built a life together. Her climbing the corporate ladder at Summit Dynamics, me building a business one client at a time. I figured we were a team. My overtime hours paid down the mortgage. Her bonuses filled our travel fund. We had our roles, our routines, the kind of marriage you look at from the outside and think, yeah, they've got it figured out. But here's the thing about routines. Sometimes they're just the soundtrack playing in the background while something else entirely is going on. And I was about to find out my marriage's soundtrack was hiding a whole different story. Olivia Reynolds was built for the corporate world. While I was sanding walnut boards in my shop, she was in glass-walled meeting rooms downtown, pitching campaigns to people who wore watches worth more than my truck. She started at Summit Dynamics as a junior marketing associate, bright-eyed, hungry, willing to work weekends without complaint. And she moved up fast. Every year it seemed like her title got longer and the hours got later. By year 4, she was managing her own team. By year 6, she had her eyes on senior marketing director. And when Olivia set her sights on something, you could bet she was going to get it. She was charming when she needed to be, ruthless when it counted, and could read a room faster than most people could read a menu. She played the politics, made the right allies, and somehow always seemed to be in the room where the real decisions were made. I admired it, honestly. I thought all those late nights and weekend strategy sessions were her way of proving she deserved that corner office. I was proud when she texted me the words, "Just got promoted." Proud, and completely unaware that those 4 little words were the opening line of the worst chapter of my life. 6 years. That's how long Olivia and I had been married. Long enough to collect inside jokes, half-finished home projects, and 100 little routines that felt like second nature. I made the coffee every morning. She always left the light on over the kitchen sink at night. She claimed it was for safety, but I think it was because she knew I liked coming home to that warm glow after late jobs. We'd been through the kind of everyday battles every couple faces, busted plumbing, family drama, the occasional argument about money, but I thought we'd come out stronger each time. She'd slip a note into my lunch bag, just a quick "love you" scribbled in her neat handwriting, and I'd feel like the luckiest man in the city. Olivia had this way of making me believe we were unshakable, that no matter how hectic her deadlines got, or how many overtime hours I pulled in the shop, we were still us, solid, unbreakable. I trusted her without a second thought, and that trust was about to become the weapon she'd use against me. That week, I'd been working on something special, a walnut jewelry box, carved by hand in my shop. The kind of piece you don't just buy, you pour yourself into it. I'd picked out the wood weeks earlier, looking for grain that ran smooth and dark, something with enough character to feel alive when the light hit it. Every night after work, I'd sand the edges until my fingertips felt like leather. I lined the inside with soft velvet, rich enough to make anything placed inside feel important. I even worked a hidden hinge into the back, something no one would notice unless they were really paying attention. It wasn't just a box. It was my way of saying, I see you. I'm proud of you. You've earned this. Every curve, every polish, every hour I spent bent over that workbench was a quiet love letter to my wife. By the time it was finished, you could have mistaken it for something out of a high-end boutique. And I couldn't wait to see the look on Olivia's face when I handed it to her, right there in her new corner office. If I'd known what was waiting behind that office door, I'd have burned the damn thing. Summit Dynamics wasn't just an office building. It was a monument to money. 40 stories of glass and steel rising out of the Chicago Loop, the kind of place that makes you check your shirt for wrinkles before you even step inside. The revolving doors spun faster than seemed necessary, like they were hurrying you into the business of making money. Inside, everything gleamed. The marble floors were polished to a surgical shine. The lobby smelled faintly of expensive coffee and expensive perfume. Even the security guards looked like they'd passed some secret style test. Tailored suits, clean fades, and that cool, silent nod they gave to the people who belonged there. I'd been in the building before, but it always made me feel like a tourist in a foreign country. The air felt different, thicker somehow, like every breath had to be justified by your annual salary. But that day, I didn't feel out of place. I had my secret weapon, the walnut box tucked under my arm, polished so smooth it could blind you under the lobby lights. I wasn't there to do business. I was there to celebrate my wife, and that's exactly what I thought I was walking into, until I stepped off the elevator. The moment I stepped through those revolving doors, the security guard, Carl, I think, gave me a nod. We'd crossed paths enough times that he didn't bother with the usual, "Who are you here to see?" routine. Just a quick smile, a flick of his eyes to the walnut box in my hand, and a friendly, "Big day?" "Yeah," I said, returning the smile. "Promotion day." He grinned like he was in on a secret. "Go make her proud, man." The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside, watching the floor numbers climb. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked more polished than usual. Fresh shirt, clean shave, the kind of presentation I figured would make Olivia's co-workers see I wasn't just the guy who built tables in a workshop. For 30 floors, I let myself imagine her reaction, her surprised smile, maybe even a little tear in her eye when she saw what I'd made. I didn't know it yet, but Carl's warm, "Go make her proud," would be echoing in my head later, for all the wrong reasons. The elevator chimed on the 15th floor, and the doors slid open to that quiet hum of corporate productivity, phones ringing softly, the low murmur of conversations, the click of expensive heels on polished floors. I'd barely taken 3 steps toward Olivia's new corner office when a familiar face appeared from around the copier bay. Layla Torres, one of her coworkers I'd met once or twice at company mixers, always polite, always just watching. But this time, there was something different in her eyes. She glanced at the walnut box in my hand, then at me, and the corner of her mouth curled into a smirk that didn't match the polite tone of her words. "She's in with Richard," Layla said, tilting her head toward the CEO's office at the far end of the hall, thanking him for the promotion. It was the way she lingered on thanking, like she was quoting from a script only she and a few others had read, that made my stomach tighten. I gave her a short nod, forcing a smile. "I'll wait." Layla's smirk deepened. "Oh, she'll definitely be surprised to see you." And then she just stood there, like she was waiting for the curtain to go up on a show she'd been dying to watch. The hallway to Richard Hale's office wasn't long, but that afternoon it felt like it stretched for miles. Every step I took, the sounds of the office seemed to fade. Phones stopped ringing, keyboards stopped clacking, until all I could hear was the faint, muffled rise and fall of voices from behind that door at the very end. I shifted the walnut box under my arm. It felt heavier now, as if it knew something I didn't. Halfway there, I caught a laugh. Hers. Olivia's. It wasn't her work laugh, the one she used in meetings when she wanted to seem agreeable. It was softer, slower, the kind of laugh I'd once thought was just for me. My chest tightened. The air in that hallway felt too warm, like the building's climate control had given up. I passed a framed photo of Rich Parr. By the time I reached the door, I wasn't smiling anymore. I was listening. And what I heard next told me this was not going to be the moment I'd imagined when I walked into this building. I knocked once, polite, almost timid, then turned the handle before anyone inside could answer. The door swung open, and the first thing I saw was Olivia on the CEO's leather couch, not sitting across from him in some businesslike posture, not reviewing documents or shaking hands over her promotion. She was straddling Richard Hale, her hands buried in his hair, his fingers locked around her waist, their mouths crushed together like they were the only two people left in the world. For a second, my brain refused to process it. It was like looking at a photograph where two unrelated images had been spliced together. My wife's face and a stranger's hands on her body. The walnut box slipped from my fingers, landing on the carpet with a soft thud that sounded deafening in the quiet of that room. Neither of them noticed. They didn't break apart, didn't even glance toward the door. I stood there for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds that would replay in my head for months, each one slower than the last. Then I turned and walked away without a word. I didn't slam the door, didn't shout, didn't give them the satisfaction of knowing I'd just seen everything. I stepped back into the hallway, the muffled hum of office life rushing in like static in my ears. My feet carried me past Layla, still standing there, still wearing that half smirk, without so much as a glance. The elevator seemed a mile away. When the doors slid shut around me, the mirrored walls threw my reflection back at me, pale, jaw locked, eyes flat. I looked like someone walking away from a crime scene he couldn't unsee. 15 floors down, my hands stayed loose at my sides. No fist clenching, no trembling, just empty. By the time I reached the lobby, the box was gone from my thoughts. So was the promotion. All I could hear was the blood in my ears and that faint echo of her laugh, the same one I'd heard in the hallway, now twisted into something ugly. Carl, the security guard, gave me a friendly nod on my way out. I didn't nod back. I pushed through the revolving doors, stepped into the cold Chicago air, and kept walking. Not fast, not slow, just steady. Because if I stopped moving, I knew I might turn around, and I wasn't going back. Chicago traffic was its usual mess, but I barely noticed. I don't remember the lights turning green or the cars merging around me. I just drove. The steering wheel felt foreign in my hands, like I was piloting someone else's life. Every street I turned onto, every intersection I passed, looked the same, muted, colorless, drained of anything that used to mean something. The cold February wind rattled against the truck's windows, but inside I felt nothing. No heat, no chill. Just this hollow space in my chest, like someone had scooped everything out and left the shell behind. Her laugh kept looping in my head. Not the sound itself, but the way it changed once I knew where it had been, who it had been for. It was like hearing an old song you used to love and realizing the lyrics were about someone else all along. I should have been furious. I should have been ready to spin the truck around, storm back in there, and burn it all down. But rage would have meant I still felt something. All I had was silence. By the time I pulled into our driveway in Naperville, I couldn't even remember the route I'd taken. I just sat there for a moment, engine running, staring at the house we'd made together, and wondering how much of it had been real. I killed the engine but didn't get out. The porch light was off. Olivia wouldn't be home for hours, maybe not at all tonight. That used to worry me. Now, it was an opportunity. I replayed those 3 seconds in the CEO's office, the way her hands curled into his hair like it was the most natural thing in the world. Most men in my position would have marched right back in, made a scene, demanded answers she would have twisted into lies. But I knew Olivia. If I confronted her now, she'd cry. She'd spin some half-truth about misunderstandings and work stress. She'd turn my anger into her moral high ground, make me the irrational one. And just like that, the truth would be buried under her performance. So I decided to give her nothing. No fight, no warning, no chance to get ahead of me. I'd been her trusting husband for 6 years. Now I'd be something else entirely. Quiet, watchful, patient. The kind of man who lets his opponent think they're winning, right up until the moment they realize the game's over. I stepped out of the truck, locked the door behind me, and walked inside without turning on the lights. This wasn't going to be a confrontation. It was going to be an execution, clean, precise, and final. The front door shut behind me with a dull thud, the kind of sound that feels final. I turned the deadbolt and slid the chain lock into place, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted control. Control over who could walk into my life from this moment on. The house was dark, quiet, too quiet. Usually there'd be music playing from the kitchen speaker, a half-finished glass of wine on the counter, maybe her heels kicked off in the hallway. Tonight, nothing. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock in the living room. I set my keys on the table, sat down, and stared at the empty space in front of me. My hands itched for something to do, but I wasn't ready to pace or slam doors. I needed to think. Not like a husband, not like a victim, like a man planning a job. If I went at this blind, she'd win. She was too good at controlling narratives, too used to staying 3 steps ahead. But if I stayed quiet, if I collected proof, made my moves in the shadows, then when I struck, there'd be nothing she could do to stop it. I opened my laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. First step, follow the money. I logged into our joint bank account, the one where my paychecks had landed every other Friday for the past 6 years. The numbers blinked onto the screen. $47,382.15. Not bad. That was supposed to be our kitchen renovation fund, a project we'd been planning for over a year. Except now, all I could see were the dinners, the hotel rooms, the little luxuries she'd dressed up as client expenses. I clicked through the recent transactions. The patterns were obvious once I stopped looking at them like a trusting husband and started looking like a forensic accountant. $312 at Le Jardin, the kind of restaurant where the wine list doesn't have prices. $489 at the Langham Hotel, 2 nights, midweek. A $1,200 charge at a boutique lingerie store I didn't even know existed. Every swipe of that debit card had been pulled from my overtime hours, my weekend jobs, my sweat. I stared at the transfer funds button. My thumb hovered over the mouse for half a second before I clicked. All of it, every last cent, moved into my personal account, one she didn't have access to. On screen, the joint account balance dropped to $0, a clean slate. For her, it was the first crack in the foundation she didn't even know was crumbling yet. The transfer confirmation flashed on my screen. $47,382.15 successfully moved. In less than a minute, I'd taken away her safety net. That number wasn't just money, it was leverage. It was the overtime hours I'd sweated through in July heat, the weekends I'd spent installing cabinets instead of taking a break, the vacations we'd postponed for the future. And now, it was sitting somewhere only I could reach. I opened our joint savings next, $23,847.42. That was supposed to be for Europe, her dream trip. I stared at the balance for a long moment, imagining her logging in one day, seeing that number, and thinking about all the things she'd buy without me in the picture. Not anymore. Another click, another confirmation. Transfer complete. 2 accounts emptied, 2 lifelines cut. For the first time all day, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not joy, not relief, but the sharp, steady focus of a man who's finally stopped bleeding and started building armor. The accounts were mine now. Step 1 was done. Step 2 was about to hurt her a lot more. I switched over to the credit card portal. 3 active cards, 2 in my name, 1 in hers. A combined limit of $25,000. Her card was the one she flashed like a badge at boutiques, spas, and restaurants that didn't even bother printing menus in English. Every dinner with clients, every impulsive shopping spree, every luxury weekend she dressed up as networking. All of it had run through that slim piece of metal. I selected her account and clicked Cancel Card. The system asked for a reason. I typed unauthorized spending, 1 down. Next, I went through mine, downgrading, freezing, lowering limits until there was nothing left she could touch without coming to me first. Every click was a quiet cut, a vein sealed off. In the space of 15 minutes, I'd turned her life from champagne and silk to cash-only reality. When she reached for that card again, maybe to book another hotel room, maybe to buy another dress for another man, she'd get a message she couldn't sweet-talk her way out of. Declined. I closed the laptop, leaned back in the chair, and let the silence fill the room. The money was locked. The plastic was gone. And I was just getting started. With the bank accounts locked and the cards dead, I turned to the small drains, the ones she probably never noticed but added up month after month. Streaming services, gym memberships, monthly beauty box deliveries, a $79 subscription to some wellness coaching app she used twice before forgetting about it. One by one, I logged in and hit cancel. Each confirmation email was another thread snipped from the fabric of her comfort. Netflix, gone. Pilates studio, gone. $180 a month wine club, gone. That boutique flower subscription she liked to show off on Instagram, canceled before the next delivery could hit the doorstep. I imagined her coming home one night, glass of wine in hand, settling into the couch, only to find her favorite shows gone, or showing up at the gym in her $200 leggings, only to be told her membership had been revoked. It wasn't about the money now. It was about erosion, taking away the little luxuries that made her life feel easy, while I stayed silent in the shadows. By the time I was done, her digital life had been stripped to the basics: utilities, insurance, and the mortgage. Everything else had been turned to dust with a few clicks. I shut the laptop, the room dim except for the glow of the screen fading to black. Step 3 complete. I sat there in the dark, the quiet pressing in on me. The house felt too big, too hollow. For hours I'd been moving like a machine, transfer, cancel, delete, until there was nothing left to click. And in that stillness, the weight started to creep back in. I picked up my phone and scrolled to the one person who'd answer no matter the time. Miles Bennett. We'd been friends since college, roommates, groomsmen at each other's weddings, the guy who once drove 3 hours just to help me move a busted couch. When he answered, his voice was groggy but steady. "Mark, what's going on, man?" For a second I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight, like saying it out loud would make it more real. Then I told him everything. From walking into Olivia's office building with the walnut box, to hearing that laugh, to what I saw when I opened the door. Miles didn't interrupt, didn't offer pity, just let me pour it out until the silence on the line was thick enough to cut. Finally he said, "You're not alone in this. You hear me? Whatever you need, proof, a place to crash, someone to keep you from doing something you can't take back, you call me first." It wasn't a fix. It didn't undo what I'd seen. But it was a tether, one steady line to keep me from drifting too far into the dark. I ended the call with only 2 words. Thank you. And for the first time that night, I felt like I could breathe. When I hung up with Miles, the house seemed to shift around me, no longer a home, but a stronghold. If Olivia could walk in here at any moment, carrying her perfume and lies, then this wasn't my space anymore. It was a waiting room for betrayal. That ended tonight. I went down to the garage, found the old toolbox, and pulled out the lock set I'd bought months ago, but never installed. By 1 a.m., the deadbolt on the front door was replaced. The chain lock was reinforced. The back door got a double-cylinder model that needed a key on both sides. Every click of a screw, every turn of the drill, felt like I was nailing shut a coffin, one she didn't even know she was in. When I was done, I stood in the hallway, keys in my hand, and realized there was one more step: the garage door opener. Hers went into the kitchen drawer, locked inside a metal cash box I hadn't opened in years. By the time I finished, the place was sealed. If she came home tonight, she'd find a door that wouldn't turn for her, locks that no longer recognized her. This wasn't about keeping her out forever. It was about reminding myself, this is my ground now, my rules, my fortress. I didn't stay in the fortress that night. After changing the locks, I packed a single duffel, just the essentials, and drove across town to Miles's apartment. When he opened the door, he didn't ask questions. He just stepped aside, letting me in like it was the most natural thing in the world. His place was small, one bedroom, one couch, a kitchen that smelled faintly of burnt coffee, but it felt safe. No perfume lingering in the air. No framed photos of a life that might have been a lie. I dropped the bag by the couch and sank into it, the springs creaking under my weight. For the first time since the afternoon, I could feel my breathing slow, the fog in my head starting to clear. Miles handed me a glass of water, then sat across from me. "You need rest, Mark, and tomorrow, you need a plan." He was right. Up until now, I'd been moving on instinct, cutting off money, locking doors, canceling cards. But if I wanted to end this on my terms, I couldn't just keep reacting. I needed to think like her, anticipate her moves, stay 2 steps ahead. Lying on that couch, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead, I felt something I hadn't all day: control. It was small, fragile, but it was mine. And tomorrow, I'd start turning it into something she couldn't take back. Lying on Miles's couch, I stared at the ceiling while my mind stitched together fragments I hadn't noticed before. The more I rewound the past few months, the more the small, scattered pieces began to align into something far bigger than infidelity. The sudden late meetings, the business trips without a clear itinerary, the times Olivia pushed a stack of tax paperwork toward me, telling me to sign before I even skimmed the first page. If this was just an affair, she would have hidden it better. But Olivia wasn't careless. She calculated every move, which meant letting me see her in the CEO's office this afternoon might not have been a slip. It might have been the opening act of a plan. Then I remembered the phone bill from 2 weeks ago, 3 separate calls, each lasting over 30 minutes, to a downtown law firm. At the time, I barely noticed, thought it was work-related. Now, it burned in my mind like a red warning light. She wasn't just betraying me. She was clearing the board, setting the stage to push me out of my own life, empty-handed. The numbness I'd carried since the afternoon started to dissolve, replaced by something sharper, cold, calculated. If she had a plan, then I would make one bigger, one that would leave her with nothing she could take. I picked up my phone and logged into the carrier's account. From this moment on, I'd know exactly who she was talking to, when, and why. I was halfway through pulling up Olivia's phone records when Miles came back from the kitchen with 2 mugs of coffee. He set one in front of me, sat down, and said, "Before you go too far down this rabbit hole, there's someone you need to meet." I looked up. "Who?" "Harper Quinn," he said without hesitation. "Divorce attorney, And not just any attorney. She's a shark. The kind who smells blood before you even realize you're bleeding. I raised an eyebrow. Sounds expensive. She is, Miles admitted, but worth every cent. 15 years in the game. Used to be a corporate litigator on high-stakes acquisitions. Then her own husband tried to screw her over in a divorce. He walked away with a used car and a mountain of debt. She's been dismantling people like him ever since. I pictured her instantly. Tailored suit in a shade meant to intimidate, heels clicking with precision, eyes scanning a room and finding the weak spot before she even sits down. Miles reached into his wallet and slid a heavy black business card across the table. Harper Quinn Family Law and High Asset Divorce. No slogan. No tagline, just a name. The kind of card you didn't hand out unless your reputation spoke for itself. If Olivia's already talking to a lawyer, you need someone who plays offense, Miles said. Harper doesn't just defend, she flips the board and sets it on fire. I picked up the card and tucked it into my wallet. Call her, I said. Miles nodded. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. And Mark? Don't let Olivia know you've got a lawyer. Let her think you're still in the dark. Her office was on the 28th floor, high enough that the city below looked like a neatly arranged chessboard. The reception was glass, steel, and silence. No soft chairs, no cozy plants. It wasn't a place you came to feel comfortable. It was a place you came to win. The door to her office opened, and Harper Quinn didn't walk out. She arrived. Charcoal gray suit, tailored to an edge sharp enough to cut. Burgundy silk blouse under the jacket, sleeves rolled just enough to signal she was ready to work. Hair pulled back into a sleek knot, not a strand out of place. Her heels struck the hardwood with a measured rhythm, like a clock counting down to someone else's ruin. Her eyes locked on me the moment I stepped inside. Not warm, not cold, just assessing. It was the kind of look that could strip a man down to the truth before he said a single word. Mark, she said, her handshake firm, precise. Miles told me enough to know you're in the middle of a storm. Sit. I sat. She didn't. She circled to her desk, set down a leather-bound notebook, and clicked her pen once. This is not about feelings, she said evenly. This is about leverage. If you want sympathy, call a friend. If you want to walk away with your life intact, you give me everything. Documents, accounts, texts, no holding back. I will do the rest. There was no softness in her tone, but no wasted cruelty either. Only efficiency, honed sharp by years of combat. For the first time since the CEO's office, I felt it again. Control. Only now it wasn't fragile, because I wasn't alone. I had a shark in my corner. I started from the beginning. Not the CEO's office, earlier than that. The small things that didn't make sense at the time but now lined up like dominoes. I told her about the late nights, the business trips with no receipts, the tax paperwork she'd rushed me into signing. I told her about today, the look on the receptionist's face, the sound of that colleague's voice, and the moment I opened the door. I didn't spare her the ugly details. The way Olivia's hands gripped the back of the CEO's neck, the way his lips moved against hers like they'd done it 100 times before. The way she froze when she saw me, then recovered too quickly, like she'd already rehearsed her reaction. I told her about what happened after, how I walked out without a word, drove home, locked the house down, moved money, cut off her access to cards and subscriptions. I explained why I went to Miles's place and what I'd found in the phone records. The whole time, Harper didn't interrupt. She just wrote, page after page, her pen scratching across the paper with mechanical precision. Every so often, she'd glance up, not to ask a question, but to weigh something I'd said. When I finished, the room went quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside. She closed the notebook, set the pen on top, and leaned back in her chair. "All right," she said, her voice low, deliberate. "Now I know exactly where to start." Harper tapped the edge of her notebook with one manicured finger, her gaze fixed on me. "Mark," she said, "this isn't just about her cheating. That's the distraction." I frowned. "Distraction from what?" "From the money," she replied without hesitation. "Everything you've told me, those rushed signatures, the phone calls to a law firm before you even knew there was a problem, the sudden trips, screams preparation. She's not just breaking the marriage. She's positioning to strip you of your assets before you realize she's moved them." The words hit hard, but they made sense. Too much sense. Harper leaned forward, her elbows on the desk. "I've seen this pattern. They create chaos in one hand so you're too focused on the betrayal to notice the other hand emptying your accounts, moving titles, rewriting ownership structures. By the time you react, the paper trail is clean." I felt my jaw tighten. "You think she's already started?" "I'd bet on it," Harper said flatly. "And if she's working with the CEO, that gives her resources, and someone who knows how to move money without triggering alarms." She reached for her pen again, scribbling something in her notebook. "First, we freeze anything in your name that she can access. Second, we pull a full audit of joint accounts, property records, and business holdings. Third, we find out exactly which lawyer she's been speaking to downtown." She looked up, eyes sharp enough to cut. "If she's playing for everything you have, then we make sure she walks away with nothing she wants." For the first time, I didn't just feel like I had a lawyer. I felt like I had a weapon. Harper flipped to a clean page in her notebook and began writing in tight, decisive strokes. "All right, Mark. We're going to collect every shred of financial documentation before she has the chance to alter or destroy it." She started listing items in quick succession. Her tone clipped, like she'd done this 100 times before. "Bank statements, personal and joint, for the past 3 years. Credit card bills, all of them, even the ones with low activity. Mortgage documents, property deeds, car titles, tax returns, federal and state for the last 5 years. Retirement account statements, any business ownership records, stock portfolios, or trust agreements." I was scribbling to keep up, but she stopped me with a raised hand. "No emails, no screenshots from your phone. I want original files or high-quality scans from the source. We want records that can stand up in court, not photos she can claim are fake." She leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. "Do you have access to the Home Office?" I nodded. "Yes, I changed the locks before coming here." "Good. Tomorrow morning, before she has a chance to suspect anything, you're going back. You'll gather every binder, file, and external hard drive you can find. Bring them here, and my paralegal will catalog and secure them." I hesitated. "What if she notices they're gone?" Harper's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Then she'll know you're not asleep anymore, and that's fine, because once she realizes you're awake, it'll already be too late for her to hide anything." She set her pen down, the sound sharp against the desk. "Tomorrow, Mark, we start cutting her off at the knees, on paper, before we ever step into a courtroom." I left Harper's office with a folder full of instructions and a list of documents long enough to choke a banker. By the time I reached Miles's apartment, my phone buzzed with a new email notification. The sender's name froze me mid-step. Layla Mendez, Olivia's closest friend, bridesmaid at our wedding, someone who'd smiled in every holiday photo for the past 9 years. Yet lately, she'd been strangely distant. The subject line was short. "We need to talk. Alone." I hesitated before opening it, my thumb hovering over the screen. When I finally tapped, the message was brief, barely 3 sentences. "Mark, I can't say this over the phone or email. I know things you need to hear before it's too late. Meet me at the Lantern Cafe tomorrow. 2 p.m. Come alone. No emojis, no pleasantries. Just a ticking clock disguised as an invitation." I stared at it for a long moment, my gut tightening. Layla wasn't the type to break loyalty without a reason. If she was reaching out like this, It meant she was sitting on something big, the kind of truth people keep buried until they can't anymore. I closed the email, slipped the phone into my pocket, and exhaled slowly. Tomorrow I had 2 missions: strip Olivia's financial leverage and find out why her best friend suddenly wanted to see me in secret. The Lantern Cafe sat on a quiet corner, the kind of place where the clink of cups felt louder than it should. I got there 10 minutes early and took a seat facing the door. Layla walked in right on time, no makeup, sunglasses still on, like she didn't want to be recognized. She slid into the seat across from me, didn't order, didn't smile. "You didn't tell anyone you were meeting me?" she asked, her voice low. "No," I said. "What's this about?" She glanced over her shoulder before pulling a small manila envelope from her tote. Inside were 2 things: a printed email chain and a slim USB drive. "I shouldn't even have this," she whispered, "but I saw something, and once I did, I couldn't unsee it." I pulled the papers closer. The emails were between Olivia and someone with the CEO's corporate address. They weren't just personal, they were strategic. Dates, account references, talk about positioning assets and finalizing transfers. Then she nodded toward the USB. "That's a voice recording from a night at his condo. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, it just happened. You'll hear her say exactly what she's planning." I met her eyes. "Why are you giving this to me?" She hesitated. "Because I thought she was my friend. But what she's doing to you, it's wrong, and I'm not going to be a part of it." I slipped the envelope into my jacket, my pulse steady but sharp. Whatever was on that recording, it was going to change the game. Back at Miles's apartment, I locked the door, drew the curtains, and plugged the USB into his laptop. A single audio file appeared: dinner_condo_4_15.mp3. I clicked play. First, the faint hum of a city night, traffic in the distance, the clink of glasses. Then her voice. Olivia. Clear. Confident. 3 months, maybe less. Once the transfers are complete, he won't even know what's gone until the papers hit him. A man's voice. Smooth. Deliberate. The CEO. "You're sure the titles will be clean?" "Harper's Contact is handling the Shell LLCs. Assets will be layered through 2 holding companies in Nevada, then shifted offshore." I froze. Harper's Contact? My stomach, no, Olivia laughed, low and sharp. "The best part? He thinks I'm distracted. The late nights, the trips, he'll chalk it up to the affair. He won't realize he's already broke until I'm long gone." Glasses clinked again. The CEO's voice dropped to a murmur. "And after?" "After," she said, "he can keep the house. Empty. I just want what matters. Liquid assets, the investments, the retirement accounts. He can't fight if he doesn't have the money." The file ended with the faint scrape of chairs, the sound of a kiss, and the door closing. I sat there staring at the screen, the words echoing in my head. 3 months. That was the window she'd given herself to erase me financially. But now I had her timeline. And with Harper, I'd make sure she didn't make it to month 2. Back at Miles's apartment, I locked the door, drew the curtains, and plugged the USB into his laptop. A single audio file appeared: dinner_condo_4_15.mp3. I clicked play. First, the faint hum of a city night, traffic in the distance, the clink of glasses. Then her voice. Olivia. Clear. Confident. 3 months, maybe less. Once the transfers are complete, he won't even know what's gone until the papers hit him. A man's voice. Smooth. Deliberate. The CEO. "You're sure the titles will be clean?" "Harper's Contact is handling the Shell LLCs. Assets will be layered through 2 holding companies in Nevada, then shifted offshore." I froze. "Harper's Contact?" My stomach, no, Olivia laughed, low and sharp. "The best part? He thinks I'm distracted. The late nights, the trips, he'll chalk it up to the affair. He won't realize he's already broke until I'm long gone. Glasses clinked again. The CEO's voice dropped to a murmur. And after? After, she said. He can keep the house, empty. I just want what matters. Liquid assets, the investments, the retirement accounts. He can't fight if he doesn't have the money. The file ended with the faint scrape of chairs, the sound of a kiss, and the door closing. I sat there, staring at the screen, the words echoing in my head. 3 months. That was the window she'd given herself to erase me financially. But now I had her timeline, and with Harper I'd make sure she didn't make it to month 2. Harper's office was quieter than usual when I walked in the next morning. I didn't sit. I just set the manila envelope on her desk and slid the USB across. "What's this?" she asked, already reaching for her laptop. "Proof," I said, straight from Olivia's mouth. She plugged it in, hit play, and leaned back, arms crossed. The room filled with the faint hum of city traffic, then Olivia's voice, calm, calculated, laying out her 3-month plan. Harper didn't move. Her eyes stayed on me, but I could tell she was absorbing every word, committing it to memory. When the recording ended, she clicked the track back to the start, listened again. This time, she scribbled notes, timestamps, key phrases, names. Finally, she closed the laptop. "This," she said, tapping the notebook, "isn't just infidelity. It's fraud, asset concealment, potential conspiracy to commit financial crimes." The way she said it, steady, unhurried, made my pulse quicken. "Mark, if we move quickly, we can do more than defend you. We can go on offense. That recording is admissible. And if we pair it with financial records, we can freeze her transfers before they touch offshore accounts." Her eyes sharpened. "She's built this plan to bleed you dry without leaving a trail. But now we have her trail, and her voice on tape guiding the whole thing." I leaned forward. "So what's next?" Harper's lips curved in a predatory half-smile. "Next, we make sure she never sees it coming." Harper's paralegal wheeled in 2 carts stacked with binders, printouts, and a laptop already logged into my online banking archives. We spread the files across her conference table, 3 years of my financial life laid bare in neat chronological stacks. "Here's what we're going to do," Harper said, sliding a legal pad toward me. "We build a parallel timeline. On one side, every confirmed sighting, trip, or meeting tied to the affair. On the other, every significant financial move in the same window." I started listing dates from memory, the late meetings, the business trips, the day I saw her in the CEO's office. Harper's paralegal added calendar entries from Olivia's work schedule that Miles had helped retrieve. Harper took a red pen and began circling entries on the bank statements. "See this? March 12th. She's in Chicago for work. But there's a wire transfer from the joint account to a new brokerage account, opened in only her name, same day." She flipped 2 pages. "April 15th, dinner with the CEO. That's the night from your recording, isn't it? Next morning, $48,000 moved to an LLC account in Nevada. Guess what the LLC address matches? His company's registered agent." By the time we finished, the pattern was undeniable. Every romantic milestone in the affair, trips, hotel stays, after-hours meetings, matched up almost exactly with a calculated financial move. Transfers, title changes, new accounts. "This is gold," Harper said, snapping a photo of the board we'd filled with dates and arrows. "It proves coordination. That makes it conspiracy. And conspiracy is where we start pulling in her lover as a co-defendant." She capped the red pen and met my eyes. "Mark, we're not just defending you anymore. We're going to dismantle both of them." We were halfway through the second stack of statements when Harper's paralegal frowned at her screen. You're going to want to see this." She spun the laptop toward us. It was a savings account I'd never seen before, opened 8 months ago at a small regional bank I hadn't used in years. Balance, $14,287.14. I leaned in. That's not mine. Harper was already checking the account holder info. It's in both your names, but notice the deposits? Every single one's just under $3,000. That's deliberate. Keeps it under the reporting threshold. The transaction history told its own story. 5 deposits from our joint account, each made on days Olivia claimed she was covering work expenses, plus 2 transfers from the brokerage account she'd opened in March. Harper's eyes narrowed. This isn't just a rainy day stash. This is a staging account, small enough to stay off your radar, big enough to fund her exit. And if she's using it as a funnel, the real destination is somewhere else. I felt my jaw tighten. Offshore? Or cash, Harper said. But either way, this account ties her to the movement of funds in your name. That's leverage, and leverage is power. She snapped a photo of the account summary with her phone, then turned to her paralegal. Get me every statement from the day it opened, and freeze it. Today. The paralegal nodded and started typing. Harper looked back at me, her expression razor sharp. Mark, that $14K isn't much compared to what she's trying to take. But it's the thread that could unravel her whole operation. By mid-afternoon, Harper's conference table looked like a crime scene. Statements, receipts, and highlighted printouts scattered in precise chaos. Her paralegal slid another stack toward me. These are flagged for unusual spending. The first page made my stomach turn. 2 nights at the Grand Regency Hotel, top floor suite. Charge, $2,186.42. Date, the same weekend Olivia claimed she was visiting her sister in Vermont. The next statement was worse. A lingerie boutique in Boston, $684.95, billed to our joint credit card. The date matched perfectly with a late client dinner on her calendar. Then came the restaurants, not just casual spots, Michelin-starred venues with bills ranging from $450 to $900. Always for 2. Always on nights I was working late or out of town. Harper tapped one receipt with her pen. This one's interesting. The Aveline, private wine room. That's where the CEO entertains investors. And she used your Amex. I let out a short, humorless laugh. So I've been bankrolling my own replacement. Harper's voice was flat. No, you've been building our evidence. Every charge is traceable. Every date aligns with the affair timeline. In court, these receipts don't just show infidelity. They show misappropriation of marital funds for non-marital purposes. Judges love that. She slid the receipts into a clear evidence sleeve. This means reimbursement, Mark. Not just a clean break. You can make her pay you back for every dime she spent on him. For the first time, the idea didn't just sound like justice. It sounded like the start of taking something back. Harper's paralegal wheeled in one last stack of printouts, the compiled damage report. It was a simple spreadsheet, but the numbers on it hit like a punch to the ribs. Hotel stays, $12,482.19. Lingerie and jewelry, $5,713.40. Luxury restaurants and bars, $18,945.72. Work trip flights and car services, $9,267. 55 cash withdrawals, $6,500. Miscellaneous, gifts, spa packages, wine club memberships, $4,880. Total misappropriated funds, $57,788.86. I stared at the final figure, the black ink almost burning into the page. That was more than I'd made in a year back when I started my first job. And she'd burned through it in less than 9 months, on him. Harper took the report from my hands and tucked it into a legal folder. This is more than just betrayal, Mark. This is documented financial misconduct. Judges love numbers like these because they're cold, hard facts. She can't spin them, and she can't cry her way out of them. She tapped the folder with her pen. We'll use this to demand reimbursement, offset alimony, and justify freezing her access to anything she hasn't already touched. It also strengthens our fraud claim, because this is lifestyle spending, not survival spending. I exhaled slowly, a bitter taste in my mouth. It wasn't just that she'd taken my money. It was that she'd turned it into the currency of our own destruction. Harper gave me a look that was almost reassuring. She's been writing you a bill for 9 months. Now we're going to collect. Harper pulled a fresh legal pad toward her, the kind with a margin ruled in deep red. She uncapped her pen and wrote a single word at the top: claims. This, she said, is where we stop thinking like people and start thinking like prosecutors. The first item went down in clean block letters. 1. Adultery, supported by eyewitness account, receipts, hotel records, and the recording. Grounds for fault-based divorce and possible impact on property division. She drew a sharp line under it and wrote the next. 2. Fraud, documented concealment and diversion of marital assets without consent, supported by bank records, brokerage transfers, and the $14K hidden account. Another line. 3. Conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Coordinated activity with a third party, the CEO, to move funds through shell entities and potentially offshore. Supported by recorded conversation and matched timelines. She kept going, her pen scratching fast but precise. 4. Misappropriation of marital funds. $57,788.86 in non-marital spending directly tied to the affair. 5. Breach of fiduciary duty. Failure to act in the financial best interest of the marriage, coupled with intentional deception. When she finished, she capped the pen and looked up. Mark, these aren't just divorce claims. This is the blueprint for dismantling her credibility, her access to assets, and, if we choose, her career. You don't just walk away clean from a conspiracy charge. I leaned back in my chair, the list burning in my mind. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to what Olivia had done. I was staring at the structure of how we'd take her apart. Harper slid the pad across the table toward me. Keep this. Every time you start doubting the fight, read it again. This is what she's built against you, and this is what we're going to bury her with. Harper flipped to a new page, her pen moving like she was carving the words into the paper. Mark, we're not just going after Olivia. We're going after Richard Caldwell, too, the CEO, the man whose hands I'd seen on her in his office, the man who'd helped design the blueprint to strip me of everything I had. Why him? I asked, though the answer was already forming in my mind. Harper didn't look up as she spoke. Because he's not just her affair partner, he's her co-conspirator. The recording puts him in the room during the planning of asset transfers. That makes him liable for conspiracy and potentially wire fraud if any interstate banking was involved. She started listing the claims again, but this time with both their names at the top of the page. Defendants, Olivia Bennett, Richard Caldwell. By naming him, Harper continued, we expand the net. He'll have to hire counsel, respond to discovery requests, and submit his financial records. That means any money he funneled to her, or moved for her, comes into play. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Won't that make him fight harder? Harper's lips curved into that sharp, predatory smile I was starting to recognize. Yes, which is exactly what we want. A cornered man makes mistakes. And a CEO with a public image to protect? He'll settle fast to keep this from hitting the press. She tapped her pen on the desk. Tomorrow we file for joinder, bringing him in as a co-defendant. And when we serve him, we serve the board of directors at the same time, publicly. I could almost see it, the shock on his face, the way the boardroom would turn cold the moment his name was linked to financial crimes. Harper closed her notebook. Olivia thought she had a partner in this. After tomorrow, she'll realize she's been dragging an anchor instead. Harper leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers. We could go loud right now, serve papers, leak to the press, but that's not what's going to break her fastest. I frowned. Then what? Silence, she said. We hit Richard with the joinder filing tomorrow. That guarantees word will reach Olivia. But we don't contact her. We don't send warnings. We don't demand anything. We let her imagination do the work. She slid a legal pad toward me, the top page blank except for one word. Control. People like Olivia fear the unknown more than confrontation. She's been in control of the timeline for months, every step planned, every variable accounted for. Once she hears her lover is being sued alongside her and has to answer to his board, she'll realize she's no longer steering the ship. I could see it, Olivia pacing in that designer kitchen, calling Richard, calling her lawyer, trying to piece together how I'd gotten ahead of her. Every unanswered question tightening the knot in her chest. Harper's tone stayed cool. When she calls you, and she will, you don't pick up. When she texts, you don't respond. You live your life like she doesn't exist. Meanwhile, we keep building the case and locking down the accounts. And when she's desperate enough to reach out in person, I asked. Harper's mouth curved into a shark's grin. That's when we give her a choice, cooperate, or watch everything collapse around her. She closed the pad and stood. Tomorrow is the last day she sleeps thinking she's ahead. By the weekend, she'll be choking on the silence. It started at 9:14 a.m. One text. Olivia, can we talk? I didn't respond. At 9:28, two more. Olivia, I heard something about you filing something in court. Call me, now. By 10:03, the tone had shifted. Olivia, what exactly are you doing? Do you even understand how much trouble you're making for yourself? I put my phone face down on the desk, let it buzz against the wood like a wasp in a jar. 10:47, longer this time. Olivia, Mark, you don't want to do this. Richard's lawyers will destroy you. You're not thinking straight. Please pick up the phone so we can handle this like adults. By noon, punctuation was gone and the messages read more like raw nerves than strategy. Olivia, where are you? Why aren't you answering this? Isn't you 12:22? One last shot for the morning. Olivia, if this is about the money, we can work something out. Just talk to me before it's too late. I didn't answer. Every ping, every desperate attempt told me Harper had been right. The silence was already working. Somewhere in her head, Olivia was rewriting the script she thought she controlled. And every hour I stayed quiet. That script was unraveling. By 2:15 p.m., I knew she wasn't going to stay behind her phone. The front desk buzzed me. Mark? There's a woman here asking to see you. Says it's urgent. Through the glass wall of my office, I saw her, Olivia, standing in the lobby in a cream blazer and heels, clutching her designer bag like it was a weapon. Her smile for the receptionist was thin and sharp, but her eyes were scanning the room, locking on me the second I stepped out. Mark, we need to talk, she said, already moving toward me. I kept my voice even. This isn't the place. She didn't care. I don't know what you think you're doing, dragging Richard into this, but you're making a mistake. You can't win this way. A few co-workers had stopped pretending not to watch. The murmur in the lobby thickened. I folded my arms. You should leave. She leaned in, her voice dropping. You think you can freeze me out? I will burn this whole thing down before you take 1 cent from me. I didn't flinch. Then I guess you'd better start lighting matches. Her jaw tightened. She glanced around, realizing the audience wasn't in her favor. With one sharp breath, she stepped back, straightened her blazer, and turned for the door. Through the glass, I saw her fumble her phone the second she hit the sidewalk, no doubt calling Richard. Harper had been right again. Forcing her into the open made her look desperate, and in front of witnesses, desperate was as good as guilty. It was just past 8 a.m. when Harper called. Her tone was almost casual, but I could hear the steel under it. "Well," she said, "looks like Richard Caldwell's starting to sweat." I sat up straighter. "What happened?" "His corporate counsel reached out late last night, off the record. They floated the idea of a mutual resolution if we agree to drop his name from the joinder filing." I could almost see the scene in my head. Richard in a darkened office, pacing with his tie loosened, ordering his lawyers to make this problem go away before the board meeting. "What kind of resolution?" I asked. Harper didn't hesitate. "They didn't get that far. I told them no." "No?" "That's right. We're not negotiating in the dark, and we're not giving him the luxury of controlling the timeline. He doesn't get to pick the terms just because he's uncomfortable. We'll negotiate when we have the leverage, not when he thinks he can salvage his reputation." I leaned back, letting that sink in. "So what now?" "Now," Harper said, "we keep the pressure on. His next board meeting is tomorrow morning. By then, the joinder will be officially filed, and every director will have a copy in their inbox." I could hear the faint smile in her voice. "Richard wants this to go away quietly. We're going to make sure it's the loudest thing in his life." For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. We were hunting. Harper slid a folder across her desk. "This," she said, "is how we make sure Olivia feels the walls closing in, before she even gets to court." Inside was a single-page document, notice of deposition, her name in bold at the top, the law firm's address at the bottom, and the date circled in red, 3 days from now. I looked up. "You're going to serve her at home?" Harper shook her head. "No, at her office, during business hours, right in front of her colleagues." I raised an eyebrow. "You're going for maximum humiliation." "I'm going for maximum leverage," she corrected. "Right now she still thinks this is a game she can spin. She walks into that building thinking she's untouchable, then gets handed legal papers in front of her boss, HR, and anyone else within sight. That changes the temperature instantly." I leaned back, picturing it. Olivia striding into the glass-walled lobby in heels, the tap of her phone against her palm, and then a process server stepping forward, asking her name, and putting the envelope in her hand. "Won't that just make her angrier?" I asked. "That's the point," Harper said. "Angry people make mistakes. Mistakes give us more ammunition. And if she tries to confront you again, we'll have grounds for a harassment claim to tack onto the case." She pulled out her phone. "I'll coordinate with the process server. You stay invisible. Let her stew in the silence until the moment she gets served." I felt a slow, steady satisfaction building in my chest. For weeks, Olivia had been the one setting traps. Now, we were walking her straight into one she wouldn't see coming. Harper's conference room looked less like a law office and more like a command center. Every chair was taken by a paralegal junior associate or investigator, each working over stacks of documents, highlighted printouts, and digital evidence boards. At the center of the table were 2 thick, identical binders, one labeled Olivia Bennett, the other Richard Caldwell. "These," Harper said, sliding the binders toward me, "are the lawsuit packages. Everything we've collected, financial records, receipts, the affair timeline, the audio recording, and the conspiracy notes, tabbed, indexed, and cross-referenced." I flipped through Olivia's binder. Each section was a nail in the coffin. Adultery backed by dated receipts, hotel records, and the witness statement from me. Fraud documented through wire transfers, hidden accounts, and staged withdrawals. Conspiracy illustrated in a 3-page timeline matching every affair meeting with a financial move. Then Richard's binder, nearly as thick. Emails showing his name tied to shell accounts. Financial reports linking his LLC to money pulled from our joint account. Even a photo of him and Olivia at the Aveline, time-stamped to match one of the largest restaurant charges. "This is enough to put them both on defense for months," Harper said. "We file the complaints in tandem. Serve her at her office, serve him in the boardroom. Same day, same hour if possible. Her lead paralegal looked up. We've already got the servers on standby. Just need your final approval to release. I closed the binders, the weight of them solid under my hands. For the first time since the day in that CEO's office, I didn't just feel like the guy who'd been blindsided. I felt like the one holding the blade. Do it, I said. Harper smiled, sharp and satisfied. Then let's make their next meeting unforgettable. Harper gathered the team around the conference table, the two lawsuit binders in front of her like matching weapons. Timing, she said, is everything. We're not just serving them, we're serving them together. Different buildings, same minute. So when one calls the other, they'll both already be holding the envelope. The lead process server, a stocky man named Dale, with the calm eyes of someone who'd seen every kind of reaction, spoke first. I'll take Caldwell. We'll hit him right before the board meeting, guaranteed audience. My guy Evan will handle Bennett at her office. We'll sync watches and move on my signal. Harper tapped a city map on the table. Richard's board meeting starts at 10 a.m. sharp. Dale will be in the lobby at 9:55. The moment he serves him, he'll text one word, drop, to Evan. Evan will be in Olivia's building by then, waiting in the lobby with the papers under a manila folder. The second he gets the text, he walks straight to reception and asks for her by name. Dale grinned. Nothing rattles people like getting served in front of their own. Harper looked at me. You stay out of sight. No chance for her to spin it into harassment or retaliation. Let the papers do the talking. I nodded, picturing both scenes playing out like clockwork. Richard freezing mid-handshake as a man in a suit slid the envelope into his palm. Olivia pausing at the security desk, only to see her name called out and a thick packet handed over. 2 separate rooms, 2 separate audiences, 1 synchronized blow. Harper closed the meeting with a single instruction. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., they stop thinking they're in control, permanently. From my seat in the cafe, the glass facade of Summit Dynamics felt like a stage. The lead actors hadn't 9:57. A flash of silver hair and a tailored charcoal suit. Richard Caldwell, right on schedule. He was on the phone, smiling that smooth public relations smile he wore in every corporate photo, the kind of smile that said nothing can touch me. I leaned forward as Dale, Harper's process server, stepped into his path like a man who belonged there. From this distance I couldn't hear the words, but the body language was enough. A greeting, the portfolio opening. The moment Richard's hand closed around the envelope, his smile faltering for the first time. Dale spoke once more, short and clipped, then turned and walked away without waiting for a reply. Richard just stood there, staring down at the packet like it might be a mistake, like it had to be a mistake. Then his free hand came up, phone pressed to his ear again. Even without hearing, I knew exactly who he was calling. 9:59. By Harper's plan, Olivia's delivery was seconds away. I pictured her in her office lobby, heels clicking, phone in hand, only to hear her name called by a stranger holding a manila envelope. Across the street, Richard's posture shifted. He stopped pacing, stopped talking. Whatever Olivia was saying on the other end, it wasn't good news. The cracks in his composure were visible even through the glass. I sat back, letting the steam from my untouched coffee curl into the air. This was the first strike, and the beauty of it? We'd timed it so that neither of them could save the other. Olivia was halfway across the marble-floored lobby of Bennett and Rowe Consulting when she heard it. "Excuse me, are you Olivia Bennett?" She slowed, pivoting toward the voice. A man in a navy blazer stood by the reception desk, holding a plain manila envelope under one arm. He had the easy, professional smile of someone who could just as easily be delivering flowers, until he spoke again. "You've been served." Her smile froze. She glanced around instinctively. Too late. 3 junior associates were seated on the lobby couches, laptops open, mid-conversation. One of them nudged the other, whispering something as they watched her take the envelope. Olivia didn't reach for it right away. "There must be some mistake," she said, voice low but sharp. The man shook his head. "No mistake, ma'am. Court verified. You'll find the date and location of the deposition on the first page." Her fingers closed around the thick packet, but she didn't open it. Instead, she looked past the process server toward the glass doors, like she was hoping someone else would walk in, someone who could make this disappear. "Thank you," the man said simply, and left without looking back. The lobby felt too bright now, the click of her heels too loud as she moved toward the elevators. She could feel eyes on her, colleagues, the receptionist, even the security guard. Each look carried the same silent question. What did she just get served for? Inside the elevator, she finally pulled out her phone. The call to Richard connected instantly. "They served me," she hissed, "in the lobby, in front of everyone." Through the static of the call, she caught his voice, low, tense. "They got me too." The doors slid shut, cutting her off from the stairs outside, but the damage had already been done. By noon, the news was already moving through both buildings like static. Richard had vanished from his own board meeting after the first break. Olivia, according to Harper's contact inside Bennett and Rowe, had spent the morning in her office with the blinds drawn. That was my cue. I walked into her building without hesitation. The security guard barely glanced up. My name was still on the visitors list from past holiday parties. The receptionist, a young woman in a navy dress, started to greet me, but I didn't stop. My target was 30 feet away, the open plan workspace outside Olivia's glass office. Half a dozen of her colleagues looked up from their desks as I stepped in. I didn't raise my voice, but I made sure every word carried. "I'm Mark Bennett," I said, meeting each gaze. "Olivia's husband. You'll be hearing a lot of rumors today, so let's keep it simple. She and your CEO, Richard Caldwell, have been having an affair for months, and now they're both facing lawsuits for adultery, fraud, and conspiracy." The room froze. One man's pen stopped mid-scribble. A woman at the far desk slowly lowered her coffee mug. From behind the glass, Olivia's head snapped up. She pushed out of her chair so fast it rolled back into the wall. "Mark, get out," she said, her voice sharp, but I kept going. "They've been moving money through shell accounts, using company resources to hide it. And if you think that won't touch this place, you're wrong. Her deposition is in 3 days." Gasps, whispering. Someone's phone lit up as they typed, probably to HR, or maybe to the press. Olivia came toward me now, all controlled fury, but she didn't touch me. Too many witnesses. Her colleagues stepped back, leaving her in a widening circle of empty space. I turned to leave, my voice even. "Just thought you all deserved to know who you're really working with." The elevator doors closed behind me on a room full of whispers. Exactly what I wanted. At Summit Dynamics, the board meeting was already in motion when the glass doors opened and Dale, Harper's process server, walked in like he belonged there. Every head turned. "Richard Caldwell?" Dale's voice was steady, polite, but carried enough weight to make the room go still. Richard, standing near the head of the long mahogany table, froze mid-sentence. "Yes?" Dale stepped forward, holding out the thick envelope. "You've been served. Court-verified documents. You'll find the details of your deposition on the first page." It took exactly 3 seconds for the energy in the room to shift. Board members leaned back in their chairs, exchanging looks. Someone at the far end of the table muttered, "What the hell is this about?" Richard didn't answer. He took the packet with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes, tucking it under his arm like it was just another report. But his hand lingered on it a fraction too long, knuckles white. One director leaned forward. "Is there something we should know, Richard?" His jaw flexed. This is a personal matter. Let's move on. But the damage was done. Half the room was already eyeing the envelope, the other half looking at each other as if recalculating their positions. The meeting continued, but Richard's rhythm was gone, his voice clipped, his points scattered. From the hallway outside, Dale sent Harper a single-word text. Drop. 2 miles away, in Olivia's office lobby, her own envelope was being handed over at that exact moment. 2 different addresses, 1 synchronized hit. For the first time, Richard Caldwell wasn't controlling the room. He was surviving it. The moment Dale left the boardroom, the silence lingered like smoke after an explosion. Richard tried to push through his presentation, flipping slides and talking about quarterly projections, but no one was listening. Eyes kept darting to the envelope on the table beside him, thick, legal, impossible to ignore. A director from the audit committee leaned toward the CFO and whispered, "That looked like a summons." The CFO didn't reply. He was already sliding his phone under the table, typing fast. In the back row, the company's general counsel sat with her hands clasped, her expression unreadable. She'd seen this before, just not here, not with her own CEO. By the time the meeting adjourned, the story had grown legs. Outside the boardroom, senior managers were gathered in clusters, voices low, glances quick toward the executive floor. Someone had already texted a friend in marketing. Richard just got served, in front of everyone. In the HR suite, 2 staffers huddled by the copier, speculating about whether it was corporate or personal. "It's always both," one said, shaking her head. When Richard finally stepped into the elevator, clutching the envelope, the ride down was dead quiet. No one made eye contact. The polished chrome doors closed on the image of a man who had walked in as the most powerful figure in the building and walked out looking like a liability. Down in the lobby, the receptionist kept her eyes on her screen, but the faintest smirk tugged at her mouth. Word was already spreading beyond the executive floor. By the time Richard reached the street, the glass tower that bore his name felt different, not just to him, to everyone inside it. The revolving doors of Summit Dynamics spun behind me, the chill of the morning replaced by the sharper, cleaner air of the street. For the first time in weeks, my steps felt steady, not heavy with suspicion, not dragged down by betrayal. Across the street, I could still see Richard through the glass lobby, standing stiff near the reception desk with that envelope in his hand like it weighed 50 pounds. People passed him without stopping, but their eyes lingered just long enough to tell me the damage was already spreading. I kept walking. The city noise felt different now, less like chaos, more like background music. A bus hissed at the curb, a vendor shouted for customers, a cab honked in the distance. All of it seemed to move around me, not through me. It wasn't over, not even close. But watching him take that envelope, knowing Olivia had hers at the exact same moment, had shifted something inside me. For weeks, they'd been the ones controlling the pace, stacking the deck, pushing me into a corner. Today, I'd taken the first card out of their hands. I passed a shop window and caught my reflection. Same face, same tired eyes. But there was something new in the set of my jaw. Not revenge exactly. Something quieter, something cleaner, justice, and it felt damn good. Two days after the double serve, I stood in the driveway of the Naperville house, hands in my pockets, staring at the place I once thought I'd grow old in. The white siding still gleamed, the lawn still looked like a magazine cover, and the front porch light was still on, burning in the daylight, like someone had forgotten to turn it off. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage where too many scenes had been lies. Harper had been blunt over the phone. Don't give her any leverage. The house is equity, and equity is power. Sell it. Now. By the time Olivia found out, the listing was already live. Photos taken, description posted, lockbox installed. I'd priced it just under market, fast sale over maximum profit. The realtor, a wiry man with an efficient handshake, slid the papers across the hood of his car. With inventory this low, you'll have an offer in 48 hours, maybe less. I signed without hesitation. Each stroke of the pen felt like shaving weight off my shoulders. The house had been the biggest tether between us. The mortgage, the shared title, the illusion of stability. It had all been a quiet chain. Selling it wasn't just financial strategy. It was a message. I locked the door for the last time, the sound echoing in the empty hallway. As I walked away, I didn't look back. Some things you burn down in court. Others you walk away from and let the silence finish the job. The realtor met me back at the Naperville house the next morning, keys in hand and a stack of papers tucked under his arm. "You sure about this?" he asked, glancing around the living room. "Selling it furnished means walking away from everything." "That's the point," I said. The couch Olivia had insisted on importing from Italy. The dining table we'd argued over in a Chicago showroom. The art prints she'd hung in perfect symmetry along the hallway. They weren't just furniture. They were props in a life I wasn't playing anymore. I walked him through every room, pointing out what would stay. The leather sectional, the kitchen appliances, the bed frames, even the silverware. "Everything except my clothes and a few personal boxes goes with the sale. I want it turnkey." He nodded slowly, making notes. "Buyers will eat this up. They'll be able to move in tomorrow with nothing but a suitcase. That's exactly what I want, for someone else to live here tomorrow." In the master bedroom, I paused. The scent of Olivia's perfume still clung faintly to the curtains. It wasn't nostalgia, it was residue. I opened the window, letting cold air rush in, and kept moving. By the time the paperwork was updated, the listing read, "For sale. Fully furnished executive home in Naperville, move-in ready. All high-end furniture and fixtures included." I signed off without a second thought. If Olivia came back to this house, she'd find nothing left to reclaim. No furniture to fight over, no trophies from our marriage to wave like flags in court. The house wasn't ours anymore. It was merchandise. And soon it would belong to someone else entirely. It took less than a week for the first serious buyer to bite, a tech couple from the city, looking to move out of their cramped condo and into something ready for a family. They didn't even haggle. The fully furnished pitch had done its work. We met in the realtor's small downtown office, the kind with framed photos of sold properties lining the walls. The buyers sat across from me, flipping through the stack of papers, occasionally exchanging quiet, excited glances. To them, this house was a dream come true. To me, it was a clean break. The realtor slid the final page across the table. "Just sign here, here, and here. Once we file, closing will be in 7 days." I picked up the pen, my hand steady. Each signature felt like another lock clicking shut behind me, securing the distance, sealing away the past. The wife smiled as she signed her side. "We love the place. It's like it was designed for us." I gave a small nod. I wasn't going to tell her it had been designed for someone else, or that the woman who picked the color of those walls had tried to erase me from my own life. That history wasn't hers to carry. When the last page was done, the realtor gathered the contracts into a neat folder. "Congratulations, Mark. Once this closes, your name's off the deed, off the taxes, off everything." I shook his hand, thanked the buyers, and stepped out into the sunlight. No keys in my pocket. No reason to ever drive back to that street. It didn't feel like losing a home. It felt like winning a battle. By the second night in the loft, I'd already memorized its sounds. The low hum of the cafe's refrigerator below. The hiss of the espresso machine steaming milk in the mornings. The muffled laughter of customers drifting up through the floorboards. It was nothing like Naperville, and that was exactly what I needed. The place had character. Exposed brick warmed by amber light from the old pendant fixtures. windows that opened wide enough to let in the salt-heavy air from the harbor. A bed tucked into the corner, plain and sturdy, with no history in its sheets. I kept my possessions to a bare minimum. Clothes folded into the wardrobe, a single shelf with my laptop and files Harper had given me, and a coffee mug on the counter. It felt deliberate, clean, stripped of anything Olivia could claim as hers. In the mornings, I'd step downstairs, order a black coffee from Elias, and watch the marina come to life, fishermen hauling gear, sailboats easing out into the lake. Up here I was above it all, but not isolated. The loft wasn't just a place to live, it was a command post. From this quiet, sunlit space I could think clearly, plan carefully, and move without her seeing me coming. Every time I glanced out at the harbor, the water seemed to whisper the same thing. "You're free now. Don't waste it." Late afternoon, I decided to head downstairs for a second coffee, more for the excuse to move than the caffeine. The cafe was quieter than in the morning rush. Sunlight poured through the big front windows, catching the swirl of steam from the espresso machine. That's when I saw her, behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back in a loose knot, moving with the calm precision of someone who knew every inch of her space. "Afternoon," she said, glancing up with a smile that wasn't forced. "You must be the guy upstairs. Elias told me we had a new tenant." "That's me, Mark." "Renee," she replied, sliding a clean mug under the tap. "Welcome to Harbor Grounds. Coffee's on the house today. Consider it a housewarming." I hesitated, then nodded. "Thanks." "Black." She poured, then leaned on the counter. "Not many people choose the loft for long term. Most just pass through." "Maybe that's what I'm doing," I said. Though even as the words left my mouth, I knew this place felt more permanent than I wanted to admit. Her eyes lingered on me for a moment, not prying, but curious. "Well, whether you're here a month or a year, we've got the best coffee in the harbor, and the best view from that window seat." I took the mug, the rich scent rising up with the heat. Outside, the harbor water rippled in the L. Something about Renee's grounded ease made the space feel less like a stopgap and more like a beginning. "Thanks, Renee," I said, meaning more than just the coffee. She smiled again, quick, genuine, and turned back to her work. I carried my cup to the window, watching the harbor breathe, and felt the faintest shift inside me. Maybe I wasn't just escaping anymore. Maybe I was starting over. That night, after the cafe had closed, I could still hear faint sounds from below, chairs being stacked, the rattle of cups, Renee humming along to whatever song was playing on her closing playlist. The air in the loft smelled faintly of roasted beans and cinnamon. It was nothing like the sterile, over-scented air of Naperville. This was warm, human. I sat at the small desk by the window, nursing the coffee Renee had given me earlier. Across the harbor, the last streaks of orange and gold faded into the lake, replaced by the soft glow of dock lights. Somewhere in the distance, a foghorn sounded, low and steady. I thought about our conversation earlier, the way she'd said, "Whether you're here a month or a year, we've got the best coffee in the harbor." It wasn't just small talk. She had the kind of grounded energy that made you believe a place could hold you steady. For months I'd been moving through rooms that didn't feel mine, conversations that were just rehearsed lines in a bad play. Here, above Harbor Grounds, I didn't have to play anything. I closed the laptop, pushed my chair back, and leaned against the window frame, looking down at the quiet street. If starting over had a sound, it might be the hum of a cafe closing for the night and the gentle slap of water against the pier. It was a small beginning, but it was mine. The next morning I woke up early, not because of nightmares this time, but because sunlight was spilling in through the wide loft windows, warming the floorboards. I pulled my duffel into the center of the room and unzipped it. Clothes, a laptop, Harper's folders, a framed photo of my dad, and a pocket knife I'd carried since college. That was everything I had brought with me from Naperville. Looking at the pile, I realized most of it wasn't essential, not to survival, not to the next chapter. I grabbed an empty cardboard box from the corner, one that had held coffee supplies from the cafe below, and set it on the floor. This would be the real-life box. The rule was simple. If it wasn't truly mine, if it didn't hold value beyond nostalgia or appearances, it didn't make the cut. Into the box went the essentials: laptop, Harper's case files, the pocket knife, the photo of my dad, a leather-bound notebook I hadn't touched in years but still carried every time I moved. Everything else, extra shirts, the watch Olivia had given me on our 5th anniversary, even the cufflinks I wore to our wedding, went into a separate bag for donation. By the time I finished, the real-life box sat small and neat in the middle of the room. It wasn't much, but it was real. I slid it under the desk by the window, the harbor in full view beyond the glass. For months my life had been padded with things that looked like security, but were really just set pieces in someone else's show. Now what I had left wasn't much to look at, but it was mine. The real-life box sat under the desk like a small fortress of truth, but next to it on the floor was another pile, one I couldn't ignore any longer. It was the pile of pretend. A framed wedding photo, glass cracked at the corner from when I'd tossed it into the duffel. Olivia's handwriting on the back of an anniversary card, flowery, scripted, and now nothing but a well-dressed lie. The silver cufflinks she gave me on our 5th anniversary, engraved with forever. The leather wallet she bought last Christmas, knowing full well it was my own money paying for it. I picked up each item, turned it over in my hands, and asked the same question. If I keep this, what am I keeping it for? The answer was the same every time, nothing worth holding on to. The wedding photo went first, frame and all, into a trash bag. The sound of glass knocking against glass was sharper than I expected. The cufflinks followed, the metal hitting the bottom with a dull finality. The card, the wallet, the rest of the anniversary relics, they all joined the pile. When I tied off the bag, it felt heavier than it should have. Not from the weight of the objects, but from the years they pretended to mean something. I carried it down the back stairs, past the cafe's kitchen, and out to the dumpster in the alley. The bag landed with a muffled thud, swallowed by the dark. As I walked back upstairs, my hands were empty, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like freedom. The harbor was quiet that morning, so still it looked like glass. From the loft window, I could see Renee unlocking the cafe downstairs, just like every other day since I moved in. Beside my desk, the real-life box sat exactly where I'd put it weeks ago. Inside were only the things that survived the purge. My father's photo, Harper's files, the pocket knife, my notebook. Everything else, the cufflinks, the anniversary card, the wedding photo, was gone. The bag had hit the dumpster with a dull thud, and with it, the weight of a life built on someone else's lies. Harper called. The case was locked in. Richard and Olivia were cornered, no way out without losing everything they'd tried to take from me. "Enjoy your day, Mark," she said before hanging up. "You've earned it." I poured a coffee and took it to the window. Down below, Renee looked up, caught my eye, and raised her own mug in a silent toast. I smiled back. This loft, this harbor, this quiet, none of it was part of the life I'd planned, but it was real, and that made it worth keeping. I thought about the years I'd wasted holding on to things because they looked like they mattered. Now I understood. I only keep the real things,